She read it once, then again, slower this time. The words didn't change. 30 days to leave the United States. No dispute, no do-over, no one beside her as the clock started ticking. Her hands were shaking, but not from surprise, more like her body already knew what her heart refused to admit. She dialed Matt before her breath could steady. No answer, try again. Voicemail, again, straight to voicemail, and again, still nothing. The fourth time her fingers hovered over the screen. Maybe the fifth would be different. Maybe he'd pick up and say, "We're going to fix this." But she knew, this wasn't a bad signal. This was silence with intention. She texted. "They're deporting me." Delivered, not read. The apartment was frozen like a set after rap, quiet, hollow, motionless. Only now it wasn't acting. This was real. Jasmine sat on the couch with the notice still pressed against her chest. It didn't feel like paper anymore. It felt like someone had cut the air out of her lungs and handed it to her in writing. She had arrived in America, believing it was the beginning of a forever. Now she sat in her rented apartment, alone, sleepless, and unwanted, with a letter that felt more like a goodbye than a decision. Everything she had tried to build was being erased in a government-issued font. There was no reaction from Matt. Not even a question mark, not one call. This was the man who used to call her every morning from the studio. The one who once waited outside immigration with coffee and flowers after her first DMV nightmare. The man who said, "We're in this together," before the cameras even rolled. And now, he was MIA the moment things stopped being cute for Instagram. Jasmine still tried to believe it was a mistake. Maybe he'd seen the message in a hurry and forgotten to respond. Maybe he was in meetings. Maybe he was overwhelmed. Even after the third year of being let down, she still made excuses for people who never made time for her. The letter didn't care about explanations. It sat in her lap like a ticking clock, official, final, cold. No one tells you how different your name feels when it's printed on a government document, without warmth, without context. Just, "You must go." She walked to the window. Somewhere out there, Matt was living his regular day. Her phone stayed dead silent. Half the world argues over storylines, screenshots, and fan theories on Jasmine's life. But the real headline wasn't on any blog yet. Because nobody wanted to post what didn't sparkle. Her lawyer called. She couldn't remember if she answered on the first or third ring. He said the filing had issues. Paperwork delays. Timing problems, gaps. The government didn't buy what TLC had sold, a true, meaningful marriage. Words like insufficient evidence and questionable intention hit harder than insults. They meant she might have always been a placeholder, not a partner. She tried texting Matt again. Not to beg, just to get something, anything. Hope had started to feel like muscle memory. "Please, I need you." Painfully simple. Still unread. The fridge hummed. Distant sirens wailed. Life was behaving like nothing was wrong. And Jasmine sat there, quietly decaying behind the scenes, off script, waiting for someone who claimed she was his future but didn't even pick up when hers was disappearing. If he wasn't going to stand beside her now, had he ever really planned to? She told herself not to panic. Maybe he was just overwhelmed. It had been a long filming week. Sponsors, crew notes, mostly forgettable drama made to fill screen time. They were both running on fumes. Maybe this had nothing to do with her. But when Matt walked through the door that night, the room shifted. He didn't ask how she was. Didn't mention the letter. Didn't even spot the envelope still lying face up on the kitchen counter, right next to the keys he always pretended not to lose. She waited for the light bulb moment. Her heart stalled at every glance he cast toward anything but her. Instead, he grabbed a soda, scrolled through his phone, and asked if there was any pizza left. That same phone stayed face down between bites. When Jasmine spoke softly about the deportation letter, about how maybe they could go to the lawyer together, see if refiling could shift the outcome, he nodded without looking up. No eye contact, no follow-up. Just a mumbled, "We'll figure it out." Except he didn't ask how soon she had to leave. He didn't even ask what the letter said exactly. There wasn't "we" anymore, just her rambling. And him, nodding like he had already fast-forwarded past this part of her life. She didn't cry. Not yet. She started moving differently. Smaller, quieter. Maybe if she didn't take up too much space he'd come closer. Maybe he was distancing himself because of stress, not disinterest. It's easier to believe someone is struggling than indifferent. Some self-protection sounds like optimism. So she gave him space, hoping space would lead him back. She stopped bringing up the lawyer. She didn't mention the calendar on the fridge. She tried asking about smaller things like what he wanted for dinner, or if the producers mentioned next week's shoot location. Every answer came back shorter than the last. One-word replies. Late night, yeah, texts. Screen light on his face until 2 a.m. while her eyes watered in the dark. She caught herself checking his phone reflection in his glasses. Not for cheating, at least not yet, but for confirmation he was there. But even in the same room, he wasn't. He didn't reach for her hand when she brushed past him. He didn't offer a hug when she choked down news from her lawyer. He didn't seem curious that the woman sleeping next to him might no longer be allowed in the country 28 days from now. Jasmine clung to the idea that the silence was fear. His fear. It made sense. Fear can harden people. It can confuse love for obligation. Maybe he was frozen. Maybe he didn't know how to handle something this big. Maybe this isn't Matt the partner. Maybe this is Matt the human being caught in systems outside his control. But if you love someone and they fall into a river, you don't sit on the bank and say, "I'm scared too," you jump. And Matt wasn't even taking off his shoes. She went quiet for almost a day. Gave him room to walk through the door and ask something, anything. But when she saw him flicking through Instagram reels while she cooked dinner, she opened her phone again and typed the same message. "They're deporting me." Delivered. Still not read. Was this neglect, or was Matt already rehearsing life without her in it? The phone buzzed late that night. Not from Matt, but from production. A casual message about rescheduling a confessional appearance. Jasmine's deportation wasn't even mentioned. No question about how she was holding up, not even a fake check-in. Because for them, this wasn't a crisis, it was content. The next morning, one of the producers let something slip. Offhand, like it didn't matter. "Matt says you're stressing too much," he whispered. "He told the crew you tend to overreact." Overreact. Like losing your immigration case after years of begging the government to approve your relationship was a tantrum. Like fighting to stay in a country where you've spent birthdays without your children and built a life from scratch with some overly dramatic plot beat. Overreact. The word pinned itself to Jasmine's spine. She didn't yell. What was the point? The narrative was already shifting. She knew how these things played out on camera. Confident Latina becomes villain. Calm white American boyfriend becomes the guy who tried his best. It had already started. In stories, silence is mystery, but in real life it's dismissal. She pressed Matt again later, gently. "The lawyer says if you write a single affidavit, just a paragraph, it could shift the appeal." He didn't respond right away, just glanced at his phone again. "I'll look into it," he said eventually, barely interested. She asked, "Will you come meet the immigration attorney with me, like last time?" Pause. Then, "I don't know if I'll be free that day." Free that day. As if this wasn't the day everything they'd ever claimed to share was on the line. There used to be a time when he made promises like, "We'll do it together, and I'll never let you go through any of this alone." Now, she was begging for paperwork while he made excuses and nodded like a coworker skimming bullet points. Jasmine couldn't tell if he was avoiding the stress, the cameras, the guilt, or her entire future. Maybe she'd become less of a partner and more of a problem to manage. The woman who used to make him look interesting on camera now stared at the immigration portal instead of posting photos. This wasn't love shrinking. This was support being revoked in real time. And the betrayal wasn't a blow, it was the nothingness. No texts, no gesture. Silence that grew louder every hour until it felt like the apartment walls might crack under it. She sat down with her lawyer anyway, alone, explained the entire situation, recounted the timeline, showed every message, every photo, every episode where they'd said they were in love. He flipped through the binder silently, before finally saying, "Without his cooperation, this will almost certainly collapse." The idea of safety had once anchored her through every chaotic filming season, every culture shock, every homesick night. Now that same idea mocked her. Because America is a better life was easy to believe until America decided she didn't belong. And the man who was supposed to anchor her here barely looked up from his notifications. She went home, cooked what used to be his favorite meal, waited for him to walk in and say something about the smell. He didn't, he just said, "I'm not really that hungry tonight." Was she his partner, or had she only ever been a temporary storyline dressed up as a real love story? The scent hit her first. Not strong, but unfamiliar. A soft, citrusy cologne she didn't recognize clinging to Matt's hoodie when he brushed past her on the way in. She didn't say anything, not immediately. It felt silly to ask. Maybe it was new, maybe it was nothing. But the last time he changed cologne, it had been because Jasmine said the old one smelled too much like his dry shampoo. And back then, he cared about the small things. Now he had new cologne, and she didn't remember being asked. She noticed more shifts in silence than in speech. His passcode changed. He used to leave his phone charging, screen up, unlocked. Now it was always face down. Always on low brightness. Face ID only. The crew had started whispering too. Little things. Someone on audio had mentioned Matt being over it. Another had seen him out late after filming, alone. Jasmine tried not to listen, but off-camera facts don't require editing. And raw truth always feels quieter than gossip, until it detonates. He slept on the couch now. First, he said it was because she was crying too much and needed space to sleep soundly. Then it was because he had a cold. Then he stopped giving reasons altogether. She didn't argue. She just shifted, slowly shrinking in a space she used to help decorate. Clung to routines like laundry or showering at the same time each morning, hoping something familiar might slow the unraveling. During filming, he was still charming, still soft-spoken, still touched her shoulder at the right time and sat beside her in interviews like a loyal co-star, but between takes, removed, quietly amused. Laughing with the makeup artist, cracking jokes with the sound guy, she watched him flip between roles. Off-camera Matt was a mystery. On camera, he was the guy fans would call patient in the comments. She called her mother again that week, told her things felt weird. Her mom asked gently, "Do you think he's falling out of love?" Jasmine didn't answer. Because even if she believed love was still there, the presence of love means nothing when the person who holds it can't look at you without looking through you. She scrolled through photos of her kids that night, zoomed in on their faces, watched a video of one of them playing the piano off-key, giggling mid-note. She had given up tuck-ins, playground visits, school meetings for this. She traded being mom for being future wife. She told herself the pain was temporary. It had to lead somewhere better. Now the only thing growing faster than her doubt was the flight risk in Matt's body language. He'd started keeping headphones in during dinners, saying he was behind on podcasts. He came home later, dressed sharper, excused himself more. He said he was making time for himself. Jasmine knew personal space when she saw it. But this felt less like space and more like staging. Then one afternoon she found it. A stack, neatly arranged by the doorway. Her makeup bag, a few dresses, a picture frame of her with her youngest child, still in the original airport photo. She froze. When he walked in, she didn't even have to ask. He waved vaguely at the pile. "Thought you'd want to start organizing." Organizing? What was there to organize when your life was cracking under your feet and your partner was already sorting you out like a moving box? At what point does being just tired turn into being finished? And how long had she been hoping he'd notice she was slowly vanishing from his life? She wasn't looking for proof. She was looking for reassurance. The kind that silence had been refusing to give her for weeks. Matt's tablet was left charging near the kitchen sink. Nothing unusual. Except this time, he forgot to log out. And something in her, raw and trembling, pushed her past the line she'd been respecting for too long. The lock screen lit up. One message, a name she didn't recognize, followed by a heart emoji. It barely blinked before disappearing, but the pit that opened in her stomach didn't need details. Still, Jasmine opened the tablet, not to catch him, but hoping desperately to be wrong, to find something boring. A promo meeting, a cousin, a group chat, anything else, but it wasn't group messages. It wasn't a work contact. It was conversations, long ones, layered with voice notes, jokes, and nicknames. Her stomach dropped faster than her breath could catch. They talked every day. Midnight laughs, compliments, conversations about their future plans. A photo of Matt sitting in a cafe, half smiling toward the camera. And in the reflection of the window, another woman's hand resting over his. The date sent chills down her spine. 2 days after she had received her deportation letter. While she was spiraling. While she was crying on the bathroom floor. While she was calling immigration offices and leaving voicemails in broken English, begging for updates. He was having lattes with someone new. Her fingers kept scrolling, numb and shaking. Each paragraph was a blade delivered slowly, but one line cut deeper than the rest. "I can't wait until filming is over and we can finally be free." Free. She didn't even know which word bruised more. We, like there was already a they, or finally, like loving her had been some exhausting punishment. There were no naked photos, no steamy texts, but this was worse. Because it wasn't reckless, it was planned. Emotional, intimate, a relationship that bloomed quietly while she unraveled alone. The woman responded to his complaints about Jasmine, her struggles, her worries, her breakdowns. Laughing emojis filled the screen under messages like, "She's crying again." Jasmine sat back slowly, tablet still glowing in her lap. The tears didn't come, not yet. What replaced them was colder, a quiet dread. She'd been made into the punchline of her own disaster. When Matt walked through the door, she was still sitting there. Tablet on the counter now, her eyes swollen but dry. He saw the screen, Stopped mid-step, she didn't shout, didn't throw anything. Her voice barely moved. I know. For a second he froze. Then he gave a tiny sigh, not panicked, resigned maybe, like someone disappointed the secret was out but relieved he didn't have to keep hiding it. His reply wasn't sorry or stunned. You're so dramatic. Dramatic. The word landed heavier than the lie. She flinched, only slightly. In his eyes she had always been too much, too emotional, too intense, too hard to handle. And now that she was drowning for real, he had the nerve to act like her pain was a performance. He made her collapse look like overacting, like she'd broken her own life for the thrill of it. When your partner cheats on your trust, your love, and your fight for survival, but still acts like you're the problem, what exactly is left to save? The next morning, her front door knocked before sunrise. Boom mics hovered like insects the second she cracked it open. Soft voices asked if she could give them 5 minutes to set up in the living room. She didn't say yes, she didn't say anything, but no was never part of the contract. They were going to film, with or without permission that day. She hadn't slept. Her makeup was a smudge of salt and mascara from hours ago. Still, they clipped on the mic like she was part of a scene, not a person. A producer crouched beside her as she sank back into the couch. Forced concern wrapped in a whisper, "You're doing great, just speak from the heart." She stared at the lens, then at the crew's reflection in the window behind it. Half their expressions were blank, trained, numb. The other half looked away when she made eye contact, like guilt already lived in their throat, but the paycheck asked for silence. She asked again, quietly this time. Can we stop? They shook their heads, barely audible. One of them mumbled, we need this part for the emotional arc. And that's when the collapse became content. The sobs weren't camera tricks. The gasping breaths weren't special effects. Jasmine folded into herself, real and raw, while 3 cameras filmed it from different angles. Nobody called cut. A sound guy, one she remembered from early shoots, dropped his headset and walked out. Loud enough for the mic to catch him say, I can't do this anymore. But even that didn't stop production. A junior tech stepped in silently and kept recording. This wasn't a show about love anymore, it was about surveillance. Watching a woman unravel while everyone adjusted lighting to catch the glisten of pain on her cheeks. They handed her tissues off-screen. Not support, not space, just enough clean paper to keep her camera ready. She got up once to breathe in the bathroom, closed the door, but they left a camera focused on the reflection in the mirror. Her outline was blurry behind fog, but the audio stayed clear. Every sob, every whisper of her kids' names. Every time she begged for sleep, for silence, for Matt to say anything. When she opened the door, red-eyed, she stared straight into the lens and asked, You're still filming? And the cameraman, who looked barely older than one of her students back in Panama, paused. Then said, almost apologetically, They told us to keep going. That night, the production team met without her. Some argued to cut the footage. Some thought they should bring in a counselor mid-shoot. But the executive on the call overruled them all. Said it was the most authentic material they'd ever shot. Authentic. What does that even mean when it costs someone their dignity on national TV? Jasmine wasn't lighting up confessionals with fake arguments anymore. She was pleading, dismantled, a person hanging on not for drama, but for breath. Outside, the world debated spoilers and shipping predictions. Inside, a woman lay on her living room floor, mic still clipped to her shirt, sobbing next to a suitcase no one helped her pack. If your most painful moment is considered gold by the crew hired to document your love story, who is left to protect you from your own contract? It started with a single Reddit post titled, So, Matt's not who we thought he was. It wasn't dramatic, it didn't even go viral right away, but the screenshots attached, those burned through the 90-day fandom like wildfire. Messages pulled straight from the leaked tablet convos. Timestamps. Cafe location confirmed through Google Maps. The kicker, a photo of Matt's reflection smiling across from a woman who definitely wasn't Jasmine, dated the week she received her deportation notice. That was the match. Twitter took care of the gasoline. Threads exploded. Clips from old episodes resurfaced. Fans pulled footage of Jasmine crying in bed while Matt slowly packed for a work trip. Viewers rewatched scenes that had once seemed sweet and now read like slow-motion manipulation. The same calm nods people praised him for on-screen now seemed cold, detached, calculated. Commenters, once obsessed with how patient and chill he was, started asking new questions. Why didn't we notice he never actually comforted her? Why did every decision get deflected until it was too late to fix it? How did he manage to stay so neutral while she was spiraling over deportation? Then Matt posted. Not on his feed, he knew better than that, but on stories, where posts vanish in 24 hours. A blurry black screen. The text, "Protect your peace, distance yourself from toxic people." The audacity sent the internet into meltdown. Protect your peace, from the woman who left her home, her children, her job, and got ghosted when her visa cracked in half. Fans weren't having it. His comments exploded. People dug through his old posts, calling him out one by one. Even those who had never liked Jasmine now recognized. She was loud, sure, but she had shown up again and again, while Matt slowly erased her one silent mile at a time. Still, he stayed quiet. No apology, no defense. Just another vague post days later, healing in silence. By then, it was too late for silence. Former contestants started dropping subtle support for Jasmine. A few hinted they'd seen things on set. One wrote, "Being calm isn't the same as being kind." And it didn't take long before fans turned their rage toward TLC. Many asked whether the show had edited him favorably. Had they protected Matt's image while Jasmine's emotions got dialed up in post? Did the editors soften his coldness while sharpening her meltdowns? Producers stayed silent. But fans didn't need confirmation. They did what the internet does best: turn speculation into evidence. Edits were dissected. Episode timelines were matched against public outings. Patterns appeared. Matt's detachment wasn't new, we just hadn't been paying attention. And right in the middle of the storm, after days of no posts, Jasmine reappeared on Instagram. One sentence. No video, no filter. "Some truths destroy you before they set you free." That was all, but it said everything. How did the man once framed as reality TV's most emotionally stable boyfriend become a symbol of calculated silence in the face of someone else's destruction? The notice stayed where she put it, taped to the fridge door like a reminder to buy milk, except this one counted down your life. Jasmine crossed off the days in black marker, her handwriting getting smaller as the numbers crept towards zero. At first she thought she'd take it down after the appeal came through. That hope didn't last long. Emails from producers kept coming. Not about help, not about lawyers. They wanted check-ins, camera shots. "Any update on your mental state? Can you walk us through what this feels like?" Like she was being sentenced, and they were scheduling the execution time for prime viewership. Some days, she didn't speak for hours. The silence in the apartment had changed. It wasn't sadness anymore, it was abandonment. You don't cry when you're already too hollow to shake. Matt hadn't spoken on camera about the order. Off camera, even less. He still slept on the couch and left early for errands no one verified. He didn't ask about the lawyer. Didn't ask what would happen if her case got denied. Didn't even look at the calendar, where her last day in the US was underlined 3 times in red. When she asked him softly one night if he would at least go to her final appeal with her, he frowned like it was a scheduling inconvenience. That was the last time she asked. She walked into the lawyer's office alone. It was raining. Always raining when something ends. The envelope came 2 days later. She didn't open it right away. She made tea, cleaned the sink, checked her phone. No messages, no new missed calls. Then finally, she stared down at the beige legal envelope, thick and slightly bent in the mailbox like even the postman didn't want to be part of this. She tore it open with a butter knife. Appeal denied. No option for delay. No second extension. No humanitarian hold. Just leave or risk detention. For a few minutes, the air didn't move. Neither did she. TLC emailed that same day. They asked if she'd be comfortable sharing her reaction on camera. Said the audience needed closure. Called it a powerful moment of bravery. Bravery, she hadn't fought for applause, she fought for oxygen, and lost. She taped that second notice next to the first one. Stared at them both while the kettle boiled and the camera crew set up in the living room. She opened the fridge and stood there longer than she needed to, cold air on her face. It felt more grounding than anything anyone had offered her in weeks. Matt didn't come home that night. The producers didn't cancel filming. Her neighbor didn't say goodbye. Her own voice had almost disappeared from the apartment, replaced by the sound of clocks, phones buzzing with production reminders, and footage she wouldn't get to review before the internet dissected it frame by frame. If no one around you will stand up, speak up, or even show up, do you start believing you're not worth defending at all? Her phone lit up during one of the quietest nights of her life. No cameras, no noise, no Matt. The production crew had wrapped early, said something about giving her space. But by then, space felt indistinguishable from abandonment. It was past midnight. Her suitcase sat open on the floor, half filled with her clothes and the leftover pieces of a life she'd tried so hard to make permanent. Then the screen buzzed. She almost ignored it. Unknown number. But something in her gut told her to look. One glance, 2 words, it was Gino. For a second she just stared. Her mind scrambled to place the feeling. This man, her ex, her chaos, her history, was the last name she expected to see blinking in that dark room. But her thumb tapped the message without permission from her brain. Maybe she needed human contact. Maybe she needed to remember who she used to be before contracts and K-1 forms and mic'd heartbreaks. His message was short. I heard what's happening. Are you okay? That question, so basic but so impossibly rare, knocked whatever was left of her steady. No one had asked that. Not production, not the network. Not Matt, the man who told her he'd never let her face anything alone. Everyone had danced around it. Talked about appeal deadlines, camera angles, and shooting schedules. But are you okay? Hadn't landed in her messages in weeks. She didn't know what to say back. She typed, erased, typed again. Finally settled on, I'm leaving tomorrow. 3 dots appeared, then nothing, then again. Finally, I never wanted this for you. And somehow, that hit harder than any betrayal in the last month. Because it was more effort, more honesty, more real care than she'd received from the person who still held a spare key to her apartment. Gino saying those words, softly and without fanfare, cracked something deep inside. It invited grief. Not for the end of her relationship with Matt. That was already dead. But for the fantasy of everything she thought she'd built in this country. She remembered the way she'd left Panama, heart full of fear and promise, whispering to her kids at the airport, promising she'd bring them over soon. She believed love could bridge oceans. That TLC was a weird, lucky platform to watch it all unfold. But in the end, the man who made all those promises ghosted her. And the man who once broke her heart remembered she had won. They exchanged a few more messages. Nothing romantic, nothing dramatic. He didn't try to linger in the past. He didn't bring up fights or fan theories, just warmth that asked for nothing in return. Even that small kindness felt enormous after weeks of being used like a storyline and discarded like a problem. She knew Gina wasn't a hero in her story, but in that moment, he wasn't a villain either. He was someone who saw her suffering and didn't flinch. And that, in the mess of false redemption arcs and fake camera-safe apologies, somehow mattered more. She sat with their thread still open, blinking at the last message. I'm so sorry, no defense, no twisting, just regret. Her thumb hovered over the reply line. She wanted to ask, why didn't you say this before? Why only now? Why not when it still could have stopped the bleeding? But instead she wrote, thank you, because heartbreak teaches you something survival never does. Sometimes the person who hurt you the most is still less dangerous than the one who smiled while letting you drown. The suitcase stayed open, the lights stayed dim. And the one voice that should have been there, Matt's, still hadn't come. She stared at the calendar, helplessly pinned to the fridge by a magnet from Orlando. Her departure day circled in red like a joke, the universe kept retelling. The apartment was almost empty of her, but filled with things Matt hadn't touched in days. His schedule didn't loosen. His silence didn't shift. He'd gone invisible without even leaving the building. But the ghost of Gino, across oceans, across failings, had managed to reach her in a way no one else had dared. It didn't erase the past. It didn't fix the future. But in a night saturated with exile and endings, it reminded her she was alive. Seen. Still someone worth contacting, even if it was by someone she thought she'd never speak to again. And when the last person checking in on your heart is the one who used to break it, how do you ever trust the word love again? The last morning in that apartment did not feel cinematic. No big speech, no catharsis. Just the zipper of a suitcase grinding slowly across overstretched fabric, and the hollow echo of hangers knocking against each other in an almost empty closet. Her life in America fit into one checked bag and one carry-on. Everything else stayed behind like a set after the show got cancelled. The crew arrived on time. Of course they did. Small team, minimal gear. They said they wanted something simple for her exit. She nodded, even though nothing about this felt simple anymore. They filmed her folding the last shirt, closing the suitcase, glancing once toward the fridge where both deportation letters still hung like taunts. If you have ever left a place in disgrace, you know the shame lives in the details. The impression in the carpet where the couch used to be, the little nail holes where cute photo frames used to hang, the mug on the counter with his initials that she did not have the heart to throw away. At the door, she paused. One breath, two, no dramatic breakdown. She looked at the walls and saw versions of herself that were gone. The girl who believed this was her forever. The woman who tried to hold everything together while the man she trusted loosened every screw. She whispered, so softly even the mic almost missed it. Goodbye, America. No one replied. The crew watched, silent, lenses pointed, waiting for another tear. Instead, she turned and stepped into the hallway. Have you noticed the quietest goodbyes usually carry the heaviest weight? The car ride to the airport felt unreal. The city rolled past the window like a montage she did not consent to. Coffee shops where they once filmed cute couple scenes. Intersections where they argued off camera. Places her feet had memorized. Places the law no longer allowed her to own with her presence. At the terminal drop-off, the production van stopped a few cars behind. They kept a respectful distance now that the internet had started questioning them. It was too late to fix anything, but not too late to look careful. They filmed her walking toward the doors from afar. No mic in her hair this time. Only the long shot of a woman pulling her own bags behind her. Inside, security was routine. Remove shoes, show passport, answer standard questions. No one at the checkpoint knew they were processing a reality TV face whose storyline had ended before her contract. To them, she was just another exit stamp. To her, every stamp felt like a verdict. At the gate, she sat alone. No flowers, no tearful goodbye, no last-minute rush from Matt saying he had changed his mind and wanted to fight. His absence was louder than any speech he could have given. Her phone stayed face up on her lap, screen dark. Boarding started row by row. When her group was called, she moved on instinct. Scan ticket, walk jet bridge, find seat. Buckle in, breathe. She looked out at the runway lights and the receding city skyline and pressed her hand lightly to the window. This was the same country she had once looked at in awe when she landed with big hair, bigger lashes, and the biggest hopes she had ever held. Now it shrank beneath her like a bad memory she still weirdly missed. Under her breath, she said it again. Goodbye, America. This time, it sounded less like surrender and more like release. The plane lifted, the cabin hummed. No dramatic tears rolled down her face. She had cried out everything already. What remained was exhaustion that sat deep in her bones and a thin, stubborn line of will that refused to die. Call it survival, call it stubbornness. Call it what you want, she was still here. Hours later, the wheels hit Panama's runway with a small jolt. The doors opened to heavy, humid air. Familiar. The opposite of the cold studio sets and over-air-conditioned apartments she had grown used to. Her heart started racing, not in panic this time but in anticipation. Passport, stamp, walk, she expected cameras, paparazzi, someone from production trying to squeeze an extra scene out of her first steps home. No one was there. For the first time in a long time, the most important moment of her life was not captured in 4,000. She turned a corner, and there they were, her family, her mother, her kids. Faces older than the last time she held them, but still her babies. Her youngest ran first, arms wide, screaming her name. She dropped the bag, dropped the last pieces of her American life, right there on the airport floor, and collapsed into them. This was not pretty crying. No careful angles. No sound tech adjusting levels. It was messy, open, shaking relief. Her mother wrapped an arm around both kids and pulled Jasmine into the hug, kissing the side of her head the way mothers do when words are useless. No one yelled cut. No one asked her to repeat it for a better take. No one handed her a tissue so the audience would not look away. For once, the only audience was the people who had waited years for her to come home alive. They drove back through familiar streets. The houses looked smaller, the noise louder. Life here had moved on without her, but it accepted her back in one breath. Her kids showed her drawings on crumpled paper. Her mother asked 100 small questions. Do you want coffee? Are you hungry? Are you tired? She realized how long it had been since someone asked what she needed without a camera attached to the answer. That night, lying on a simple bed in a room that smelled like old memories and new hope, Jasmine finally exhaled. No calendar with an end date stared back at her. No producer called to check if she felt emotional enough for filming. No boyfriend slept in the other room pretending this was all temporary. Her phone buzzed once. She stared at it for a few seconds. Old instinct told her it might be TLC. Or, worse Matt, some last-minute damage control message. A generic hope you're well to protect himself, not her. The contact name surprised her again. Gino, he had waited. Let her land. Let her reconnect. Then reached out. He asked if she was safe, if the trip went fine. Then said he wanted to talk about that last night. The one production framed one way, the one he had seen from a different angle. He did not write a long essay. He did not make it romantic. He did not insert himself as savior. He simply opened a door and acknowledged there were pieces of the story the audience never got. Pieces he carried, pieces she carried, pieces the network would rather keep buried. She stared at the message for a long time. Talking about that night meant reopening wounds. It also meant maybe getting clarity no editor could provide. TV gave her a version of her own life back in chopped episodes and out-of-context clips. Hearing what he saw might hurt. It might also help her understand where things truly broke. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. In that quiet room, surrounded by her kids' soft breathing and the distant sound of neighborhood noise, she made a choice. Not for ratings, not for a contract, for herself. She typed a reply. Not because she wanted to rewrite the past, but because she needed to finally face it with both eyes open. If someone who was there, on the edge of your worst moments, told you the truth that producers edited out, would you be ready to hear it? Somewhere across an ocean, another phone lit up. A conversation was about to begin. Not for a show, not for a teaser. For once, for truth. And that, Yar, is where the next chapter of this mess starts. With the call 90-Day Fiancé never aired and the version of Jasmine's final night in America that TLC would prefer you never hear.